your attention. I know the food is good, and the drinks are good, but it's time to stand up and look over here. We have some special guests, and we have a very special awardee we want to honor. So I want you all to, for just a moment, stop the wonderful convivial conversation that you're enjoying. And first of all, we're going to introduce a couple of folks who have come from a busy schedule to be here with us when they have way too much to do. And one of those is our current president, Bob Collins.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will. I appreciate it. First of all, it is a somewhat hectic schedule, but there's no place I'd rather be at this moment, at least for the next 5 to 10 minutes, than right here. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the section's leadership on issues of such importance. I know there's a number of Drinan winners in this audience. I'm not going to try to recognize you all. I'm just going to say thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do. And thanks for being here, because it shows a continued commitment and continued dedication to what this association is all about. You couldn't really have chosen a better person to give this award to than Mark. He has, in such a calm, reasoned, understated, smart, dedicated fashion, lived up to the example that was set by Father Drinan. He's done it on so many levels and in so many areas. I know we sort of crossed paths briefly on the ABA Board of Governors way back when. He has played piano at some of the most interesting places, with his fellow sing-alongs. We were looking for a piano player the other night at the Board of Governors reception. I was like, well, why didn't somebody invite Mark? So I know that this means a lot to be able to just say thank you. Thanks, David, for everything he's done over the years. This has been a true partnership. Couldn't be going to a better person. Thanks, everybody. Have fun. Appreciate everything you do. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Bob. And I'd also like to recognize our past President Hillary Bass, who has come to honor. And thank you to all of you who have come and joined us here this evening for what I think is a very special occasion. I think many of you have been here before when we've had Drinan awardees, and I'm thrilled to have you back. And some of you are new, and I'm even more thrilled to have you here. You know, Bob Drinan had a very sly sense of humor, and I think Father Drinan would be very wryly amused that we are giving this Civil Rights and Social Justice Award in his name, in, of all places, Sin City. I mean, there's some things that happened in Vegas that perhaps should have stayed somewhere else, but we're just happy to be here because of the person we've chosen to receive the award. You know, 30 years ago, I was a wide-eyed young lawyer. I know I look much older, but I was a wide-eyed young lawyer wandering among the giants of the then individual rights and responsibilities section. And I mean truly the giants. I was appointed by the then YLD chair, Young Lawyers Division chair, to be on the YLD seat on the council. And I found myself among literally the Hall of Fame of this section. Heroes like Jerry Shestack and Jack Curtin and the inimitable, yes indeed, and the inimitable Father Bob Drinan. And I was awestruck and inspired. And some of us who were there then are still here, people like Estelle Rogers, where's Estelle, and Mark Schickman and Walter White.
There they are.
Yes, there they are.
Estelle will be here forever.
And that's just it. That's just it. I think we were all inspired by those lions of the section, and we're to stay here for 30 years and still be here continuing their work. But you know, as exceptional and as extraordinary and as inspiring as were those lions, I can say with all my heart there is someone who was there then who inspired me even more. There was someone who, you know, if you wanted something done in the social justice arena, if you wanted a civil rights and social justice goal accomplished, there was no one smarter, no one more reliable, no one more invested, no one more inspired, no one more committed, and yet no one more gracious and kind and genuine than a fellow named Mark Agrast. And I remember feeling as that dumb young lawyer, I mean I'm still dumb, but I was even dumber then, feeling like Mark was as attentive and responsive to my questions and my concerns as he was to the then president of the ABA, to the staff member, to whoever it was. Mark was there, and whenever we're in a group, we're trying to figure something out, we can't figure it out, let's call Mark. You know, Mark is one of those extraordinary people who is so scarily effective. He's like a stiletto. It's like, it just gets done. And at the very same time, he's so warm and so genuine and so kind and gracious. I mean, he's just a lovely human being. And that combination, there's nothing that compares with it. So I'm not going to take time to talk about his accomplishments or his incredibly sterling resume. I just want to say that personally, when I found out that I was going to be chair of this section, I knew in that instant that the person I wanted to celebrate tonight was Mark Agrast. This is a wonderful token, but it doesn't come close to embodying the power, the emotional power of what we're celebrating this morning. So Mark, here is with Father Drinan Award. Thank you. Good. Thank you.
It does work. Well, that was embarrassing.
You're here.
No, I really appreciate everything you said, Bill. Thanks for the generous words and for your long friendship. And thank you to the section for this wonderful tribute. Father Drinan, who is very... See, I can project. Father Drinan was and remains a real presence in my life, as I know he does in yours. I have many vivid memories of him, his warmth, his mischievous sense of humor, his unwavering optimism about our nation and the capacity of the law to advance human dignity and well-being. I had a hand in the creation of this award during Mike Greco's term as chair of the section. And I had the privilege of presenting it 16 years ago to one of my heroes, Jack Curtin, whose courage, eloquence, and passion for justice epitomized the nobility of our profession at its very best. As I look at the list of those who have received this award before me, I see the names of beloved friends and mentors who devoted their lives to advancing justice in and through our profession. I cherish the memories to those who are no longer among us, John Pickering, Jack Curtin, Jerry Shestak, Roy Hammer, and Bob Drinan himself. And I celebrate those who are very much with us and continue to inspire us by their example, including those previous recipients who are here this evening. I've seen several of them, and I'm very honored and humbled to be in their company. This section has been an important part of my life for some 30 years. It offered me a place at the table and an opportunity to serve. My arrival on the scene coincided with what I think of as this section's second generation, when it broadened its core commitment to civil rights to encompass emerging issues at the frontier of the battle for civil rights, civil liberties, and social justice. These were often unpopular causes, and it was largely through the efforts of this section that they were gradually brought into the mainstream. One of those unpopular causes was the struggle for LGBT rights. Even within the section, there were many who were uncomfortable with the issue. Some had had limited contact with LGBT individuals and were not persuaded that they merited constitutional or statutory protection. Some feared that the section would lose credibility or dilute its effectiveness by entering the fray. For me, the issue could not have emerged within the section at a more propitious moment. As a young associate, fresh out of law school, only just coming to terms with my own sexuality, I had been spurred into action by the Supreme Court's 5-4 decision upholding the Georgia sodomy statute in Bowers versus Hardwick, and particularly by Justice White's concurrence, cavalierly dismissing as facetious the notion that LGBT individuals would have a constitutional claim to equal treatment under the law. So I got in touch with Abby Rubenfeld, who many of you know, who was chairing the section's Committee on the Rights of Gay People, as it was then called, to ask what I could do to help. She told me that the section was preparing to make its third attempt to get an anti-discrimination resolution through the House of Delegates, and she asked me to draft the report. That measure had twice been defeated, each time by a narrower margin. By 1989, it had the support of several leading sections and state and local bars, but it again encountered strong resistance in the House. One opponent gave a fire and brimstone speech on the floor, warning that by supporting the resolution, the ABA would be endorsing, and I'm quoting, sodomy and those who commit it. Some opponents cited the Bible. Others proposed poison pill amendments to exempt the military, to exempt employees working with children, and to define sexual orientation to include pedophilia and bestiality. Nevertheless, when the vote was taken, the resolution carried by a margin of 2-1. That victory did not usher in the millennium, but it proved to be a watershed moment, laying the foundation for a series of ABA resolutions over the next 3 decades, which in turn were implemented through congressional testimony and amicus briefs on such matters as adoption, child custody, discrimination in the military, judicial bias, and ultimately even marriage equality. It was my privilege to have a hand in drafting and managing most of those measures and to experience that transformation in real time. By the time we presented the marriage equality resolution in 2010, we had the support of the entire ABA leadership and nearly every living past president of the association, several of whom spoke on the floor. The vote, when it came, was virtually unanimous. Many of those in this room can recount similar stories about unpopular causes that this section championed when it was far from easy to do so. Voting rights, the death penalty, affirmative action, the rights of terrorist suspects, and asylum seekers, to name just a few. Today, as so many of these causes have entered the mainstream, it's easy to forget how lonely those early battles were and how much courage it took to stand up to ridicule and abuse. Successful efforts to change the culture always look easier in retrospect than they were at the time. Once the battle is over, people look back and wonder what all the fuss was about. Today, the work of this section has been taken up by a range of other entities across the length and breadth of the association. But before there were commissions on women and minorities in the profession, before there were commissions on immigration and homelessness and poverty and the rights of persons with disabilities, before there was a rule of law initiative or a center on human rights, and long before there was a commission on sexual orientation and gender identity, it was this section that spoke for those who lacked a voice in the profession and in society at large. It is because of the work of this section and its allies throughout the ABA that our association has transformed itself from a trade group into an instrument for defending liberty and pursuing justice, from an organization that actively excluded lawyers of color and members of other disfavored groups into a truly inclusive community. The section was called to life at a dark moment in our nation's history. Today we again find ourselves living in dark times. For the first time in my life, people wonder whether this center will hold, whether our institutions, our checks and balances, the rule of law itself can withstand the onslaught of an administration like no other in our history. The damage, both at home and abroad, has been profound. It may well get worse, and it may take a generation or more to reverse the damage. But we must not allow ourselves to succumb to despair. Bob Drinan would tell us not to be despondent. Bob would tell us to act. When the moment comes, and it will come, it will be our responsibility to repair what has been broken, to rebuild what has been torn. We must be ready. When many years ago, after much deliberation, the section adopted a torch as its symbol, it was not meant simply as an emblem or trademark, but as an embodiment of our mission to keep the flame of justice alive in dark times. It is up to all of us to tend that flame and make sure that it is never extinguished. Let me close by expressing my appreciation to my parents, my father and my late mother, whom we lost just 2 months ago, who taught their children to live with integrity and to serve others. My brother Bob, who's honored their example, and my husband David, his love and support have been a constant in my life throughout our 30 years together. I spent many years working for the right to marry, but I never dreamed that we would actually be able to exercise it in our lifetime. Finally, I thank the leaders of the Section of Civil Rights and Social Justice, past and present, and the leaders of this great association who have stood with us in our struggles for justice and dignity for all. You are my heroes, one and all, and I thank you.